Welcome everyone, my name's Dom, and today I'm going to be talking about, well, I mean, you saw the title already, right? So the 2015 MacBook Pro and why it is almost perfect. So let's get into it. So I know I talk a lot about Mac stuff, and I basically at this point have just fully embraced that I am an Apple fan. I do still use Windows, I do still respect Windows, and I used Windows, like I've said before, for a vast majority of my life. And only since like 2017 have I really gotten into the Apple ecosystem. The first Mac computer I actually ever bought was my 2015 MacBook Pro, but like I said, I bought it in 2017. Now, when I looked at the different options, and at this time the butterfly keyboard thing wasn't as, well known as it is now, with all the failures and stuff that it was having. Like, people knew about it. It was happening, but, there wasn't like a lawsuit and all this other stuff that's kind of been established since the inception of the, the slimmer and butterfly keyboard, that whole new, current modern MacBook Pro style. So when I was shopping around and I looked for, more or less like what it is that I wanted to get, like obviously a newer laptop had better performance and just overall better parts. And so when comparing that to the 2015, there was quite a lot to consider, right? Like the newer ones obviously had the touch bar and the bigger trackpad. The touch bar is not necessarily so much something I find the most useful. I'm sure I can get used to it. I'm sure there's some pros to it as well as cons, but the trackpad was kind of a big thing, and the fact that everything was Type-C and everything was going to be moving Type-C, and you could plug the charger in on either side. A lot of those things were really appealing about the new MacBook at the time. And then there was the 2015, and when I looked at it, it had older hardware, but like as a package, right? As a collection of features between its I/O, its very familiar keyboard, which is basically the same as any other Magic Keyboard, the ones that you can get for like your iMac or what have you. The overall just configuration, the build, the look, the feel, everything about it was just kind of pretty much perfect. Like there was not a whole lot else you could do to that laptop, and ever since then. And I still have the laptop. It still runs. I use it all the time. It's a phenomenally well-balanced laptop. And honestly, between the rumors about MagSafe coming back to MacBooks, the return of the butterfly keyboard, it's one of those laptops where I think it's kind of hit its peak of this is as good as it really needs to be, right? It's kind of like a natural selection-y type thing. Like, it's just the feature set that the 2015 and previous, the MacBooks from that generation, right? I think it's like 2013 to 2015. That era of laptops is kind of just well-balanced, well-proportioned. It's as thin as it needs to be. The keyboard it just works. It's robust. It will continue to work for a long period of time. The I/O comes with pretty much everything you could possibly need. Yes, you can easily swap out the Thunderbolt 2 ports for Thunderbolt 3. That would be a definitely welcome upgrade to the machine, but it has the SD card slot. It has two USB-A ports. I believe they're 3.0, and they obviously could be upgraded to like 3.1. You have the MagSafe charging. So if you were to just basically, kind of take a lot of the more subtle changes that were added to more recent MacBooks and then just apply them to that chassis, the same thickness, the same build, upgrade the Thunderbolt ports and what have you. If you change all of that, that would, in my mind, make it kind of the perfect laptop. Like, there's really not a whole lot else to it. Obviously, upgrade the internals, right? And beefy processor, all that stuff. But I think there's something to be said about maintaining form factors that just work. I've talked about the iPhone 12, and the new form factor of the iPhone 12 I think is brilliant. I don't think it should have ever changed to a rounded design, ever. I get that the rounded design may be a little bit more comfortable in the hands, but whenever technology changes, if it's for the better, we get used to it, right? Like, people said the same thing about MagSafe. And so, once a form factor works, I don't think there's any real reason to evolve it. Until you find something that is definitively better. But changing back to previous ones and kind of going in and out, that's a thing that the fashion industry does, and that works for the fashion industry. But I think for the ergonomics of tech and technology and consumer products, stick with what works. I think keeping the 2015 MacBook, that thickness, that size, increase the trackpad, change out the, the Thunderbolt 2 ports for Thunderbolt 3, reduce the bezels of the screen, right? Maybe a better camera. When you add all that stuff together, but keep it there, I think what it'll do is, as the engineers get used to working with the same chassis over and over and over again, I think we're going to be able to get more bang for the buck out of every iteration of every product, be it a phone, a laptop, or what have you, right? Like, add your improvements where need be, but keep the fundamental form factor, the fundamental shape and size the same. And I would be surprised if we didn't see like huge or at least bigger leaps of improvement of products year to year. If the engineers were allowed to kind of keep everything in the same package, and I think. I do genuinely think that that's something that we, as consumers need to consider. Like, if it works, it works. Like, why change what works? I've never been a big fan of the statement like, don't reinvent the wheel, because that implies that, the wheel that you made is perfectly round, right? There's definitely, time and place where, somebody made something that's good and it rolls really well. But if you can make it ever so slightly rounder, then it's a better wheel, and I think that's something we should always strive for. And I use the joke, right? Because technically speaking, like, if you're a math nerd in any way, shape, or form, like, pi is an irrational number, so it's got like an infinite number of digits. So like the wheel can always get rounder, right? No, okay. Let's ignore that stupid joke. For anybody who enjoyed it, let me know down below. But it's I really wanted to kind of talk about just like the fact that I think this quest for technology to be like fashion. In respect to seasons and changes for the sake of changes and doing old things, and I don't think that has been I don't think that that's conducive to a successful tech industry. I think it's incredibly important to just stick with what works. And I get that businesses and tech companies and stuff like that would want to have more fashion-esque elements into their products, because you want to keep selling year after year after year, and subtle changes here, subtle changes there, and you keep the sales up. But there is a limit to that, right? Like, introduce colors, add the latest like tech, processors, bigger batteries, all that stuff like that, but leave the form factors that work alone. Now that the iPhone 12 is kind of back to that iPhone 4, iPhone 5 form factor, it needs to stay that way. The MacBook Pro, the way that it's going now, with supposedly the return of MagSafe and the butterfly keyboards, like, bring the thickness back to the 2015 MacBook. Like, it's thin enough. We do not need like pro amazing laptops that are as thin as a piece of paper. I mean, they have MacBook Airs and they're super ultrabooks for that. But there's tiers, right? It's the whole Pepsi concept, right? Like, there was a time where you just make a Pepsi for every single person and people will be happier. That's the point, right? We have bigger screens, smaller screens, thinner, but keep your tiers and your form factors in the categories that work. And as far as the iPhone 12, lose the camera bump. Hate that camera bump. Oh my God. Well, guys, that about wraps this one up. Let me know if you have a current MacBook, or one of the newer MacBooks, or one of the older MacBooks like the 2015 or anything like that. Let me know your thoughts below. If you have a completely different laptop, if you're a Windows user, let me know your thoughts below on what the perfect Windows laptop is. I would love to hear those thoughts, kind of talk about that kind of stuff. Throw a like in the video if you liked it. Definitely consider subscribing. I'm doing the new thing. Please consider sharing the video. I think it helps the channel out a lot. And as always, talk to you soon.